Hello, my name is Noelene Wright and I was a member of the team marking question 12. This question was worth 14 marks and covered 4 topics: direction fields, an application of a differential equation, mathematical induction and inverse functions. Part A. Students were asked to demonstrate their knowledge of slope or direction fields, follow the tangent lines to sketch a possible solution passing through a given point. This part was generally completed poorly. Many students had a basic idea, but the majority of the students lacked the understanding that the slope lines of the direction field need to be parallel or tangential to the graph. Hence, the graph should not cross the slope lines itself. This diagram, the first diagram shows one possible graph. A correct graph must pass through P. The second diagram shows other possible paths that could be considered. The second diagram, you need to move the top graph and the bottom graph so that they correspond with the point P, so you can actually see the path that they're taking. Areas for students to improve in this part include demonstrating their knowledge of direction fields and their use, and how to follow the tangent lines to produce a graph. Part B was the differential equation application. In this question, it was worth 4 marks in total. Part 1 was worth 3 marks. Students needed to use integration to solve the differential equation, interpret the question to use the correct values to firstly find the value of the integration constant and the value of K, and then correctly evaluate the desired time for the required temperature. Students initially failed to either separate the variables or take the reciprocal of both sides to produce an expression that they could integrate. Neglecting to include the plus C or the absolute value signs when integrating were common errors. Needing to find 2 unknowns, C and K, using provided issues for some. Poor algebraic skills were demonstrated, in particular when rearranging from a logarithmic function to an exponential function. Other areas in this part 1 that students need to improve upon: using the calculator correctly to calculate expressions that involve 1 or more correct use of logarithmic laws, the correct use of degree minutes function on a calculator. Quite a few students changed the 38.55 to 38 degrees 33 minutes. Part 2 of this question was worth 1 mark, and it was a graph. A large number of students did not attempt this question. Perhaps this was because they did not see it, or their equation was time as a function of temperature and needed to be rearranged for this part, and they weren't sure where they were going with that, or it could take too much time for 1 mark. Graph was generally well done when it was attempted. Common features were missing from the graph: the y-intercept for 1 and the asymptote for another. Part C was the mathematical induction question. This was worth 3 marks in total. In better responses, students were able to produce a proof by mathematical induction showing all the necessary steps, clearly showed the inductive step using the correct assumption for the case n equal to k plus 1, displayed significant working to indicate a correct proof. With a few exceptions, students could verify the statement for n equals 1, able to state the assumption for n equals k, and could state what was needed to be proved for n equals k plus 1. Problems occurred from this point on, when they were using the assumption to prove n equals k plus 1. The main barrier was the inability to work with algebraic fractions, and with the minus sign before the first algebraic fraction causing problems with their signs. Part D. This was an inverse function question. In total, it was worth 6 marks. In better response, students were able to correctly sketch the correct left-hand side of the concave down parabola for the restricted domain. As requested, they indicated the x and y intercepts of the function, and they also indicated the endpoint of the function for the restricted domain, that is where x equals 2. Some students failed to consider the domain of the parabola and so sketched the whole concave down parabola. For some, poor sketching skills using different scales on the axis hindered conveying a basic parabolic shape. Quite a few students also neglected to show the intercepts. Part 2 of this question was worth 3 marks. Overall, this was well done. Majority of the students interchanged x and y, rearranging with y as the subject, resulting in 2 functions, some with algebraic errors. A number of students failed to state the domain of the inverse function or expressed it incorrectly. The other fault with this question was quite a few of them left it as y equals 2 plus or minus 2 the square root of 4 minus x and neglected to work out which one of those 2 functions they needed for the inverse. Part 3 was worth 1 mark. If attempted, generally well done based on their answer for part 2 or part 1. Most students were aware the graph needed to be reflected through y equals x. Overall, question 12 wasn't too badly done. The better students managed to get the 14 out of 14. Quite a few struggled with various parts of that question. Well, I hope this provides you some insight into what we noticed during the marking of this question 12. I also hope that your start to 2022 has been a good one and hope this year will be more stable than the previous 2 years. Thank you.